Here I am. I am back, and it's still, oh goodness gracious, it's doing that thing where it won't rotate. Goodness gracious, this is not a good situation. But here I am, everybody. Be sure to hit the like button, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Here I am. I was talking about the problem of capitalist overproduction. That's what I was talking about. Orientation is locked, right? Oh my goodness, one of those crazy streams where it won't let me orient back. So now I just have to talk to you all vertically, right? It's a vertical conversation. I know our anarchist friends really want to have horizontal conversations, but today we are having a vertical conversation. So there you go. Welcome back, everybody. I don't know what's going on. Quick afternoon chat, but here we are. And I'll just keep holding my phone here in my hand, and we'll just keep talking about what I was talking about before, which is the problem of overproduction and how the Great Depression of the 1930s came right after big leaps in technology. Assembly line production had made it easier to produce radios and refrigerators than ever before. And the assembly line production leaps of Henry Ford made capitalism, much more efficient in production. But soon that led to a problem of overproduction that resulted from that. And that was the Great Depression. And right now, we are living in the aftermath of one of the greatest technological leaps we've seen in a very long time. The computer revolution is doing things that were unheard of before. Artificial intelligence, 3D printers, right? What the computer revolution is doing is exacerbating this problem of capitalist overproduction. And we are entering a period of a long-term capitalist crisis that can ultimately only be resolved by the banks, factories, and industries being organized to serve public good and not the profits of a few. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need to get beyond the profit-centered system. Profits in command must be abolished, and the banks, factories, and industries must be organized to serve public good. The means of production should be rationally controlled and operated for the good of society. That is the message of socialism. Folks, and that's what we're on here talking about on our surprise afternoon chat. So it's been a bumpy ride. We were going strong, I was talking, and then the stream died, and now we're back, but it won't let me go sideways, so I have to hold this phone here in my hands, and it's very frustrating, but we're doing the best we can, right? Just a quick afternoon conversation. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and let's just keep chatting with each other. Alec Baldwin, that's the big news. Alec Baldwin was apparently on a movie set, and with a prop gun, fired a blank and killed someone, apparently, and injured someone else. It was apparently an accident involving a prop gun. People are comparing it to the death of Bruce Lee's son on the set of the movie The Crow. That's very mysterious. Furthermore, other news, Alex Saab remains being held in prison in Miami in the United States. Furthermore, we have a situation where at this point, Donald Trump is about to set up his own social media outlet. He announced, because he's banned from major social media, so he's launching his own social media outlet called Truth. It's going to be starting on the first of the year. I guess Donald Trump will have his own social media outlet. I can't wait to get on that app and start arguing for anti-imperialism and socialism. Now, Io has just super chatted me about deeper into the problem of overproduction. All right, ABCs of it. Deeper into the problem of overproduction. All right, that's a good super chat question. And Yeah, this is a wild stream because we were interrupted about 14 minutes in, so now we're continuing. And to top it all off, I'm having to hold my phone in my hand. It's going to be a little bit difficult. I'd like to draw you some chalkboard stuff, IO, but it might be difficult with me having to hold the phone in one hand while I do it. But I will try to do that for you. Good times, folks, good times. Glad to be with you here this afternoon. What else have we seen lately in the news? Alec Baldwin, and I have a tripod at home, but I'm at work right now. I'm in the conference room. For those of you who may not have seen, this is the conference room of the office and studio in which I work. You see that? Those are New York City buildings behind me there. Right? That's not just anything, right? And over here, we've got glass walls, and out that's the rest of the office over there. This is like a corporate boardroom or something, isn't it? Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that, right? Isn't this like a corporate boardroom or something? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that nice? Isn't that great? And, we've got our lovely, totally real painting behind us. That's really great. It's amazing, folks. I feel like Donald Trump. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's totally amazing. But yeah, here, I'll let you get a nicer look out the window, right? I think that'll be fun. Here, I'll have to unplug you, from the charger. But yeah, look at that. Those are New York City. Look at that. That is New York City that you are seeing out there. Do you see that? Those are the streets of New York. There's a terrace across the way. There's some people sitting there eating their afternoon meal on the terrace. And oh, wow, look at that. New York City. Isn't that great, folks? Isn't that great? Wow. Look at that. And I'm walking around because I have to keep holding my phone because it won't sit still because it won't go sideways. Yeah, Kinky says it's like Gotham. Perhaps go into portrait mode. Finn, I would be in portrait mode if I could. That's the problem. My phone not only interrupted our stream, but it also will not let me turn sideways. It says it's locked, and it's extremely frustrating. Trust me, Finn, I would prefer to not be holding my phone and streaming vertically, but that's what we've been reduced to. Why? Who do I blame for this? I blame U.S. sanctions on Huawei Technologies. Huawei Technologies makes the best phones in the world, far better than the Apple iPhone that I'm streaming with right now. But we, in the United States, we cannot buy those phones, those Huawei phones, because of U.S. sanctions. Instead, we're stuck with Apple phones that are much lower quality, worse cameras, worse life. They don't last as long. And as a result of that, I'm stuck here holding this burning hot phone in my hand while I talk to all of you, and our streams get interrupted sometimes. I assume it's because my phone overheats sometimes, or the Wi-Fi, or I don't know what's going on. But here we are, right? And you remember, that this kidnapping thing that they do, right? This kidnapping thing that the imperialists are doing is pretty awful. Huawei is the only way, says Tunai Tahitian Fire. Well, I agree. Huawei is a state-controlled mega corporation in China. They make amazing phones, far better quality than Apple. And that's why the imperialists are determined to make sure that we don't do it. They're protecting the monopoly of the Apple Corporation. That's how much they believe in free markets, right? Free markets, right? That's what they claim to believe in, but it does not apply to Huawei, right? Huawei or no way, as they say, right? So here I am, and there you go. It's not letting me unlock the rotation button on my phone, and it's very obnoxious. And now we're stuck in this awkwardness. But what else? I mean, remember the CFO of Huawei, the chief financial officer, who was dragged off of a plane by the United States and Canada, held in Canada in house arrest for several years, ultimately returned to Canada. They tried to get her, alleging that Huawei does business with Iran, similar to what they've done with Alex Saab. We are living in the breakdown of capitalism. This is capitalism in decay. This is how the imperialists are functioning. So there you go. That is our situation. So Why don't we at this point do a roll call? We'll do a roll call, and then after that, I will answer your super chat questions, and then we will be done. And I thank you all for sticking around, even though we had to start a new stream, even though we're doing this vertically instead of horizontally, instead of, landscape as we would prefer. We're doing this vertically, and it's very annoying. Thanks for sticking around despite everything, going on. Thanks for sticking around. Who's with us today? Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. We've got Shia in Montreal, Brian Schaefer in Illinois, Nick from Canada, Utah, non-standard proletarian, Vinicius from Brazil, Cleveland Pirate Alex, Steve from Southwest Michigan, Ben in Suffolk County, Troy in New York, Michigan, Patrick from Rhode Island. Thank you. Io, Hillary in New York. Shout out to you, Io. Right? Jenny Lynn is with us. Arturo from Alaska. JT24. Orestes from Florida. Omar from Toronto. Finn from Duluth, Minnesota. Arizona, baby. Kim from Jersey City, New Jersey. Shout out to you, Kim. Right? Jenny Lynn from Cincinnati, Ohio. Broadway, North Carolina, Dust James. Dust James has a great channel. He gets great interviews. He's had so many people on his channel. You should go check out Dust James' channel. It's pretty amazing. Ben in Denver, right? Jeff in Halliburton. Isn't Halliburton a corporation? Is that also a place? I didn't know that. Paul in Norway. It's either my way or Norway, Paul. Ivan from occupied Yugoslavia, Northern Michigan, Quinn and Meredith from Washington, Kieran from San Diego, Mike in North Carolina, Ontario trans-Marxist, welcome. Right to Workistan, I assume that, the right to work laws, those are the anti-union laws of the South that forbid closed shop contracts. And there you go. Daniel from Seattle, just leaving for class. Shout out to you, Daniel. Zachary Bunch gave us a super chat. Thank you, Zachary. We do appreciate your super chat. It is greatly appreciated. Urban Gorilla from Manhattan, all righty. All right, Schultz from Washington State, Seattle, Ontario. Ewoks Unhinged is here. Ewoks is great. We just did a great video for the anniversary of the death of Gaddafi 2 days ago with Danny Shaw, Professor Danny Shaw, who's just a brilliant anti-imperialist academic here in New York, who's gone to Haiti, and Ramiro and Nick Maniaci from Flame of Liberation blog. He's also great. And we talked about Gaddafi and everything we could learn from Libya. Go and check that out on Ewoks Unhinged channel. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Greetings to Vertical Caleb from Wisconsin. Right? Well, you should all know that I'm vertical right now because I am making a political statement about ruthless authoritarianism. I don't believe in equality of people. I hate freedom so much. I hate horizontal model. I'm just kidding, of course. Right? That's what the anarchists will say, though, right? This is all a secret red-brown Nazi code. Oh boy. St. George, Utah. Ryan Preston is with us. Very cool. Jefferson, Indiana. Shout out to you, Ryan. Spring, Texas, White Panther, Captain Waffles. Who else is with us? All right, if anyone else has a super chat they want me to talk about, just shoot it my way. And now I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions. We have 3 of them so far, and we will answer 3 of them. This is a wild afternoon stream in which I have to hold the phone in my hand because it won't curve and all kinds of stuff. So, alrighty. First super chat question is Monthly Review magazine. What do I think of it? I have learned a lot from Monthly Review over the years. Monthly Review magazine. First things first. I have gotten a lot out of Monthly Review's books. They were a book publishing company going back to the 50s. They published some of the best books on China, some of the best books on Cuba. Go see Dune. You'll love it. I saw it last night. It was amazing. Okay, I haven't seen that sci-fi movie. 60s and 70s White Panthers. All right, that's a good question. 60s, 70s White Panthers. All right. Monthly Review, they published a lot of very good books about China, about Cuba. It was, Paul Sweezy, NPR Radio. All right, NPR Radio. Paul M. Sweezy, And there you go. It's they were an important, much more tanky publishing. It started out, Monthly Review started out as a magazine that was supporting Henry Wallace when he ran for president. It was people that were kind of friendly with the Communist Party USA, but not necessarily members. They started a magazine that was sympathetic to Henry Wallace's run for president in 1948. And after that, they published a lot of books. Now they're still around, and they publish Marxist academic material, and it's generally professors and academics, and it tends to lean toward more Maoist or anti-revisionist kind of stuff. They'll publish some Trotskyist stuff or whatever, but it's an academic journal. They review books. They talk about global events. They're sympathetic to Bolivarianism. They do maintain that China is capitalist, and they've written about that extensively. But they tend to be, when it comes to U.S. meddling around the world, they tend to be anti-imperialist. And I haven't read it in a while, but it's every month it comes out. They publish some good stuff. When I was a subscriber years ago, I remember an entire issue was a very important book that they translated from Spanish. That was by Marta Honecker, who's an important theoretician of Bolivarian socialism in Latin America. So there you go. But yeah, Monthly Review magazine, they are an academic Marxist magazine that is one of the better ones, right? There's a lot of, all right, Ernest Hemingway. All right, Ernest Hemingway. All right, so we got a couple super chats to get through. So we did Monthly Review. Now, how would history be different, Chaya asked, if the Communist Party had remained more labor-oriented and not recruited artists and intellectuals? Well, Chaya, I hate to give you this answer because it's not the answer you're looking for, but I really, with historical hypotheticals like that, it's very, very difficult because there's a reason the Communist Party oriented itself toward artists and intellectuals and middle-class elements during the 1930s. And the reason for that, it wasn't just that they felt like it, it was because that was the orientation of the Popular Front, right? They were trying to build a united front against fascism. And their orientation was that they had support among the working class. They had, labor unions, F. Scott Fitzgerald, they had labor unions that they were aligned with. But the idea was that fascism was recruiting a lot of people, and that there was a division in the ruling class, and that there were a lot of people, even in the ruling class, but especially in the middle class, who were opposed to fascism. And so the orientation was the Communist Party was to build a united front against fascism. Putin says USA makes the same mistakes as USSR. So there you go. William Z. Foster and the core of the Communist Party were labor-oriented. And during the late 1930s, during the Popular Front period, the Communist Party still did amazing labor work. I mean, the sit-down strike wave of 1936 and 37, it started in Akron, Ohio, with rubber workers who occupied their factory and then expanded. You had the Flint sit-down strike, Labor's Gettysburg, around New Year's time, 36 and 37, and then all throughout the country, workers occupied their factories. It was an episode of, explosive labor militancy, and President Roosevelt supported it, basically, and said it was legal for workers to occupy their factories. That was a huge development, and the Communist Party was at the center of it. And they unionized the steel industry in the late 30s with the Little Steel Strike of 1939. And, there were the Teamsters. The Communist Party was in the Teamsters Union, as were the Trotskyites. And, they had the Siege of the Midwest, where all throughout the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, the Teamsters were unionizing people. You had, the dock workers of San Francisco and the International Longshore Warehouse Union. So to say, the Communist Party was doing a very militant labor work during that period. But yes, Earl Browder made a big point of trying to recruit writers, intellectuals, and others. That was part of their strategy for defeating fascism. And it was going to happen. That was going to be their orientation. That was going to be their orientation. And so to say, well, what if they didn't? I mean, that was what was going to happen. Unfortunately, that was just how it was going to happen. There was really nothing they could do about it. That's why I don't like to get into historical hypotheticals. Because it's just you can't, it's like the butterfly effect, right? It's like, there's some famous short story where a guy steps on a butterfly and it changes the results of a presidential election. It's like every event is tied up with every other event, right? So when you say, well, what if this had happened? You're asking, the more you think about it, the more you realize there's so many other things that would have to change around it, and then so many other things that would have to change around that, and so many other things that would have to change around that. Pretty soon you can't really ask that question, right? And that's what I've realized about history, is that every event that happens is so so closely tied up with every other event. You really can't do the hypothetical thing. I mean, people write novels like that. I think Philip Roth wrote a novel about, like, what if the USA had been a fascist country or something, or I forget, what is it, The Plot Against America or something, or no, what was it called? Philip Roth wrote, and people write, novels and books that are like alternative histories, but it's just very, very hard to do. I mean, in order for the Communist Party not to have moved toward recruiting intellectuals to an anti-fascist united front, they would have had to have, the whole Popular Front would have had to have not happened. So there you go. All right, the next question is from I.O. Hillary. She is asking me to describe in depth the problem of overproduction. So I am going to do it, and it's going to be difficult because I would like to hold up a notepad, but I can't do that because we can't get the landscape orientation back. I have to hold this phone in my hand while I do it, and that's a little bit frustrating, but here goes. All right, so the worker gets paid wages to produce products, and the wages that the worker gets paid to produce are a percentage of the cost that the capitalist makes, right? The capitalist sells the product for, right? Because the worker it's the labor costs, the material costs, perhaps the shipping costs. So the capitalist has all these expenses. In order for the capitalist to make profits, he must cut into the value, the percentage of the ultimate price that is put into the final product by the worker. That percentage, it comes from the labor. It is the labor costs that the capitalist cuts into to make his profits, and that's why they call it surplus value. So the worker is only paid a percentage of what the ultimate cost of the product is, and the amount that the worker is paid is never enough, it's never equal to the final cost of the product. Because if that was the case, then the product couldn't be created. You wouldn't spend it. All right, I'm going to figure out how, I'm going to figure out how I do this. I'm going to hold my phone like this, and I'm going to draw the graph for you, because it's really hard to do this without drawing the numbers. So here goes. I tell you what, I might just do it like this, okay? I think that's what we'll do. I'm going to hold the phone like this and draw it out like this. I think we'll put this up here, right, on the table. And we'll draw it like this, all right? Okay, so we're producing a product. A is the materials the product cost, needs. B is the shipping cost of the product. So A plus B plus C. C is the labor costs of the product. And D is the final price that the product costs, okay? Right? That's how we've got it, right? C is our labor costs. The final price is D. So let's say A is 1 plus B is 1 plus C is 2. The whole final product is 4, right? Well, there's a little bit of a problem. How does the capitalist get his profits at this point? How does the capitalist get his profits? Well, in order for the capitalist to get his profits, he must cut into the labor costs. So instead, it becomes A plus B plus C1 plus C2 equals D. So that's 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. And here's the problem. C1 is what the worker gets paid. C2 is what the capitalist takes as his profits. 1 does not equal 4. And so you're always going to have the problem of overproduction, right? C1, what the worker gets paid, can never be equal to D. However, this problem gets exacerbated. I'm sorry, folks. This is very difficult under these circumstances, but here we go. This is wild. All right, but then this problem gets exacerbated by something called the falling rate of profits. Okay, all right, so we have A plus B plus C, C1 plus C2 equals D. All right, now the capitalist is constantly trying to reduce the labor costs, reduce the role of labor, of C, in production. He wants as little labor cost as possible to maximize his own profits. However, his profits will always be from C. He only gets surplus value. That's where his profits are derived, is from surplus value. And so because of that, as he diminishes the percentage of C, as the role of C diminishes, the percentage of the rate of profit that the capitalist makes also diminishes. C2 goes down, right? As the percentage of D that comes from C is reduced, right? As the amount of C is being reduced, that reduces the amount that C2 is, right? And this is what you call the falling rate of profits. So, wow, that was my attempt to answer that. And I am going to delete this stream because this is very stressful. But hey, what the heck, right? We're just having a chat. This is a friendly chat. All of you who are here, you deserve a medal because I'm here under these circumstances with a phone that's not working and holding it in my hand, and the stream is interrupted. I think I'm going to delete this stream, honestly. I don't want people tuning in and watching this because I don't even know what you could see. I'm holding the phone at the piece of paper and all of that. But that's okay, right? That's how committed I am to these conversations. So there you go. That was my attempt with a phone in my hand and with a pen to explain the problem of overproduction in more depth. Conservatives constantly say people from socialists hate socialism. Most Asians in socialist countries support their government. All right. That's, we'll talk about that as well. And I am deleting this stream afterwards, right? This is not going to be up for a while. So you all, this is a bonus. If you're here, you will be one of the lucky people to see this stream because I'm making this private after this. I don't consider this to be one of our, but there you go. But there you go. Okay. Hate socialism. All right. Next question. All right. Next question. The White Panthers of the 1960s and 70s. Okay, well, there's a confusion there, okay? So the Black Panthers, Huey Newton had a theory called intercommunalism. And the idea was that there would be what do you call it? There would be organizations of people on the basis of their nationality. They would be organized. So you had the Black Panthers, then you had the Young Lords, which was the Puerto Rican organization. And then you had the Brown Berets, which were the Chicano organization. And then you have you had different people organized by their nationalities. Now, among poor white people, there was a group called the Young Patriots, they were called. And it was low-income white people in Appalachia and in Chicago. As a teacher at NYC, you can feel my pain about things not working. And thank you, Chaya, we will miss you, but you're always a great part of these streams. So there was an Asian American group called, I think Iwar Kun, it was called, which meant Red Guards. And so there was the Young Patriots, which were low-income, I don't know what that is, that were low-income Appalachian white people in Chicago. But there was also something called the White Panthers. And don't confuse the Young Patriots and the White Panthers, because they were two separate things. Okay, so there was the White Panthers, which was an organization of counterculture hippies, mainly, who supported the Black Panthers financially and protested in support of the Black Panthers. And it was led by John Sinclair, and they were a drug-oriented organization. They used drugs and marijuana, and they were drug-oriented, and they supported the Black Panther Party. And they were separate. They were not the Young Patriots, which was like an attempt to form like a Marxist organization that was sympathetic to the Black Panthers among poor white people. This was more of a counterculture hippie organization that raised money for the Black Panthers, financially supported the Black Panthers, and was involved in drugs. And the leader of it, John Sinclair, was arrested for possession of marijuana and charged for drug dealing. And John Lennon of the Beatles very famously came out to support John Sinclair, and the charges were ultimately dropped after John Lennon came out and performed a concert in support of John Sinclair. So, it was the White Panthers were tied up with, someone's talking about the Yippies, the Situationists International. These were counterculture kind of organizations that were sympathetic to the Black Panthers. So there was that. All right, next question. NPR radio. I grew up listening to NPR, and honestly, I don't like NPR. NPR is, nowadays NPR, they try to present as if they're so much smarter than mainstream media, but it's like the New York Times, right? It's like they have, certain, BPP patriotism. All right, certain. They have certain views that are that seem more enlightened and all that, but it's still the line of U.S. imperialism. They're more critical, they're more open to debating different views, but it's still the line of U.S. imperialism. It's like PBS, it's like the New York Times. It's the smarter, more intellectual, more liberal, pretentious side of imperialism, but they're on the wrong side whenever it comes to international issues, and they generally report on things in a less commercial way. They're not concerned about advertising revenue so much as they are concerned about continuing to get their government grants, continuing to get the financial support from big corporations. And, they do like human interest stories and things like that. That's NPR. My parents, I listened to NPR endlessly growing up, and and that's the problem. Like a lot of people who live in small towns, they think if they listen to NPR, that makes them like in the know. Like, they think NPR is alternative media. It ain't. Americans believe the government should be changed by elections. Why can't communists just vote in a communist government? I vote in communist government. All right. All right. Alrighty, Ernest Hemingway, very famous writer from the 1930s, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Farewell to Arms, The Sun Also Rises. He's one of the lost generation of writers who came of age during the time of the Great Depression, was demoralized by the First World War, scarred by the trauma of the First World War. That's Ernest Hemingway. There's a sadness and a depression that kind of underlies a lot of his writing. He ultimately committed suicide. He was an alcoholic, but he was kind of the tragic voice of the 1930s. The Old Man and the Sea. That's Ernest Hemingway. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, F. Scott Fitzgerald, he is a writer. He wrote The Great Gatsby, and he wrote a number of other things, and his books are about alienation, and they're about wealthy people mainly, wealthy people drinking and having parties, but the sadness and the hopelessness behind the rich and powerful, it's kind of, the alienation and sadness, right? You read The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby, I think, is a valuable work of literature, because on the one hand, it's about kind of, it's about the American dream and the drive to go out and build and being motivated by a dream, and how when that dream collapses, it kind of leads to devastation. Also, it's full of historical insights. For example, one of the characters in the book, Tom Buchanan, who is a wealthy banker, is a Nazi. And he's, it's the 1920s, and he's walking around talking about the Nordic race and white supremacists. And you see that fascism was very popular among the ultra-rich, and, racial pseudoscience and such. And, and you get an impression of the 1920s and the bootleggers and, and what things were like. And It's about kind of, and also living in New York City. You kind of see it up close. It refers to Queens, New York, which is a more industrial borough. They refers to it as the Valley of Ashes. They have East Egg and West Egg in Long Island. And, I enjoy F. Scott Fitzgerald. But again, his writing, once the Great Depression hit, it became much less popular because he wrote about rich people having parties. And when people were starving, they didn't want to read about that anymore. So that was F. Scott Fitzgerald. Putin says that the USA is like the USSR. I think what he's getting at is that the central vision is falling apart. The USSR, there was an open debate, and there was big sections of the ruling Communist Party that stopped believing in communism. There was, big divisions behind the scenes in the Soviet Communist Party. There stopped being a central vision for the Soviet Union. They say that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and that started to become the problems the Soviet Union had in the 80s. And the USA is experiencing similar problems as a society, I would argue. So in that sense, I think what he's getting at. Now, the person who asked about people from socialist countries hating socialism, people who moved to the United States from socialist countries, yes, they hate socialism. That's why they moved to the United States. But also they had to get their visa, right? And that I always point out there are two sides to every story. Abraham Lincoln committed, the Union Army committed atrocities. Sherman's march to the sea was pretty awful. That doesn't mean that Abraham Lincoln and the struggle to defeat slavery was wrong. It just means that there were some atrocities committed by the Union Army. But if you listen to I always inevitably will, when this question comes up, end up talking about Gone with the Wind. I do declare, Captain Butler, Abraham Lincoln is invading our beautiful southern. If you listen to Gone with the Wind, that's one interpretation of the U.S. Civil War. And Miss Scarlett isn't lying. That's how she saw it. Gone with the Wind is her interpretation of events. And she thinks Abraham Lincoln was an evil tyrant. She thinks the South was great when slavery was there and the slaves were all happy. And that's what she believes. She's not lying, but she's wrong, right? The Civil War was a good thing. Slavery being defeated was a good thing, right? The Union Army was right and the Confederates were wrong. But if you ask Miss Scarlett, she's going to see it another way, right? And that's what you have to remember when you talk to somebody who fled from a socialist country. They were on one side of a war. Wars tend to have two sides, and horrendous, awful things tend to happen in wars. And they're not lying when they tell you how awful the communists are and why they had to flee, but that's their perspective. And they don't represent their entire country. Poll after poll after poll shows in Czechoslovakia and in Romania and in Russia and country after country after country, Hungary, Bulgaria, people say life was better in socialism. I do drink unnamed diet beverage, Finn. I drink it all the time. I just don't drink it on these streams. But there you go. The Black Panther Party, what was their view on patriotism? Well, the Black Panther Party, you have to understand, was a revolutionary black nationalist organization. They maintained that black people were a separate nation that had the right to their own territory. So they were not going to be patriotic to the United States because, don't delete this as a great stream. Are you kidding me? I don't think it's, well, whatever. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate your opinion. But the Black Panther Party, their view was that they, as a black nation, were not part of the United States. They were a separate people that should have their separate territory. They were a colonized people within U.S. borders. So it makes sense that they would reject patriotism. And I've always made clear that I would never demand or expect a group of colonized people to be patriotic to the United States. And I support the right of the Black Belt. I support the right of the Sun Belt and its lawn, the Old Southwest. I support the right of indigenous people to their own territory as well. And that is very important, right? And that you absolutely need to respect, the right of colonized people to say, look, we don't agree with U.S. society. We don't consider ourselves to be part of the United States. We want to be independent. And so, of course, the Black Panthers weren't going around promoting patriotism. And it makes sense. And I don't blame them at all. And I wouldn't expect them to. But you do have to remember that among the white people who supported the Panthers, one of the primary organizations was called the Young patriots organization. So I don't think the Black Panthers were like BreadTube and think that all white people that are patriotic are therefore white supremacists and neo-Nazis who deserve to be canceled. I think their attitude was that we see black people as a separate colonized people that have a right to our own territory. So we're not patriotic to the United States, but we support the right of other people to. You have to remember the whole reason that the Revolutionary Union was formed, the RU, which eventually became the Revolutionary Communist Party, was because the Black Panthers oriented their supporters to go into work, who were white, to build a communist organization among white Americans, right? And that the Revolutionary Union and the October League, they all came out of what was called Revolutionary Youth Movement 2, RYM2. And that was because the Weathermen, the Weather Underground, were a group of crazy counterculture hippies who were basically third worldists. They said that the white Americans were all pigs, they were all bought off exploiters, and because of that, you just had to engage in left adventurous street fighting and break windows in the street and act crazy and set off bombs and do crazy shit like that. And the Black Panthers disagreed with that. And, you know, it was actually, there was a speech by Fred Hampton where he called them custoristic. And he said that these people may be sincere, but they're muddleheads and they're scatterbrained. And instead, the Black Panthers called for their supporters to build a working class organization that was sympathetic to the Black Panthers and sympathetic to the Vietnamese. And so Revolutionary Youth Movement 2 was a breakaway from the Weathermen, from the Weather group, the Weather people. They broke away. They formed Revolutionary Youth Movement 2. And Revolutionary Youth Movement 2, that was the basis of what you can call the new communist movement. That was the October League, that was the Revolutionary Union, which became the Revolutionary Communist Party, and that was the Communist Workers' Party, that was the Communist Labor Party. All the Maoist groups emerged basically because the Black Panthers oriented their white supporters to go to working class neighborhoods, get jobs in factories, and try to build a new communist party. The goal of the Black Panthers was eventually to merge into one multinational communist party. They eventually wanted all the communist groups, white, black, Latino, all to merge into one multinational communist party. And this was the theory of intercommunalism that Huey Newton advocated. So this is what I'm telling you, and I hope this makes some sense to you. But, you know, I mean, you have to understand this history. Go and read Huey Newton's writings on the concept of intercommunalism. This stuff is very important, so there you go. Next question, you know, why don't we vote in communism? I'm not opposed to that. Communists participate in elections. Communists get elected. Nothing wrong with that. I would be in favor of that. Building an electoral united front around a communist program, I would be in favor of it. Now, obviously, once elected, a communist would come into confrontation with the state. The state is the armed bodies of men, the FBI, the Pentagon, the military, the CIA, and they would come into confrontation with them. And it would be necessary to build a new state apparatus. They would have to change, you know, the nature of the police, change the nature of the military, change the nature of the intelligence agencies, right? The state apparatus, the armed bodies of men, are built to serve capital. So if elected, the communists would have to change the nature of the state. Communists generally talk about three stages. The first is the united front, right? And the program, where communists put forward a program of things that they want to do. And they go to the masses and say, this is what we want to do. In Russia, they said, peace, land, and bread. We want to end the war. We want to give food to the hungry people. We want to redistribute land to the peasants. In China, they said they wanted to drive out the Japanese invaders, and they wanted to redistribute land. And they have a program that they're for. And then they take office. They get elected on the basis of that program. They organize protests around that program. That's the first stage. And then the next stage is that they have to change the nature of the state. They need to set up a new kind of government apparatus in order to implement that program. They have to change the nature of the government, new constitutions, new kinds of military, new kinds of policing agencies have to be set up. And then once a new state apparatus is created, they create a whole new social system called socialism, right? But yes, communists can get elected, and they have in many countries. In many countries around the world, communists are in the government. Many different countries have communists in parliament. In India, there's an entire region called Kerala, where the Communist Party of India, Marxist, runs the government. Communists are not opposed to participating in government, but there's an understanding that ultimately, for socialism to come into being, they would have to change the nature of the state. You need a new state. The capitalist state was formed to serve capitalism, and transitioning to socialism means changing and creating a whole new state apparatus. That is the understanding. So there you go. All right, was there progressive Democrats have reluctantly accepted Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan, can't get it passed. What should progressives do? Well, here's the thing. The first thing that needs to be done, right, is we need to stop talking about personalities, and we need to just demand things that we're for. Medicare for all, infrastructure, public control of natural resources, Fusion City. We need to stop focusing on personalities, stop focusing on partisanism, and start demanding policies. Medicare for all. That's why I like the Medicare for all march so much, right? It's about policies. And at this point, we need to be pointing out that if the Democrats really wanted to do what they say they're going to do, they could call the people into the streets. The right wing has no problem calling their people out. January 6th, Donald Trump, the Tea Party. But if Joe Biden were to get on television and say to all of his supporters, go out and protest and demand that we fix up the country, things would change. But he won't do that. Why? Because that would be bringing the broad masses of people into motion. That would be challenging the power structure of the United States, and they won't do that. Roosevelt did that, and he supported the sit-down strikes, right? And, if the Democrats really wanted these things and really wanted to fight for them, they could. And we need to point that out to people, that the reason the Democrats don't do the things they say they're going to do, the reason they don't do that is because of the fact that they don't really want to fight for it, because it would require political will and it would require risk, right? They'd have to go up against their donors. Right? Saying you're for something is easy. The time has come to stop judging politicians by what they say and rather judge them by what they do, right? Not by what they say, but rather by what they do. That is the time we're in. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. I don't know who Laklu and Mufi are. I have no idea who that is, so I can't tell you why they're against it. And on that note, I'm going to end the stream here. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression, but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Good night.